Hey, what's going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and in this video here I'm going to be showing you all how you can fix the Joy-Con drift. Now, I'm going to give a few disclaimers here. First of all, this is going to require you to open up your controllers. And I would recommend if you're going to be doing this, really you might just want to do it if you're a little bit impatient or you want to do it for fun or both. But Nintendo, I will say straight up, does have a current system ongoing right now where if you are experiencing Joy-Con drift, at least in the US and Canada, you can actually ship off, you can open up a official RMA with Nintendo and you can ship off your Joy-Con controllers and get them repaired for free. That way you just have to print off a piece of paper, you just have to supply your own box and the shipping is paid. I'm just letting you all know of that. You do not have to open up your controllers and do this. Another thing is going to be as well too, unfortunately, this fix, it is going to be a part replacement. We're just going to be replacing the sticks on these controllers here. But this is an actual defect with the sticks itself. So if anybody is familiar with Joy-Con drift, or if you're not, in short, if you haven't experienced it yet, it's because you haven't used your controllers for long enough. So if you keep using them, it's going to happen. Now, this isn't going to be any of those other, little fixes like, go in, recalibrate your sticks, upgrade your firmware, which you should try. And it's not going to involve, like cleaning or doing anything else here. No, we are actually going to replace these. However, this is just a heads up. Because we are replacing it with the same part, and the part itself is the issue here, eventually down the road, it could be a few months, it could be a few years, you are probably going to have Joy-Con drift on these same controllers yet again. This is just going to mitigate the issue for quite a bit of time, as opposed to doing, a little patch or a little fix here. So for that, with all those disclaimers out of the way, if you still want to do this, there is going to be a few things you'll need. First of all, you are going to need, of course, some new analog sticks right here, or just, sticks for your Joy-Con. I'm going to have some links down below in the description, and I'd recommend getting, a decent amount of them. I got like 20, for example, just because I'm doing this on all my controllers. You're also going to need some parts to get into your Joy-Con. So the ones that I use here, I'm using a iFixit toolkit. But specifically, I'm using a Phillips zero size screwdriver bit, a Tri-Wing zero size screwdriver bit, a little spudger tool right here, as well as having something like this, just like kind of some not pliers, but just something like this, almost some like fine tweezers, would really help you out. So with those four, let's go ahead and get all of this sorted. I will say the right one here is probably going to be the harder one, just because there's more stuff inside of it, but I'm going to try and make this as minimal as possible. So if you want to do a full reshell, that's up to you, but this is just going to be the intention of we're going to open it up just enough to swap out the stick and then close it all back up. So let's go ahead and get into this here. All right, so getting off on the right foot with the right controller, we're just going to move all of that over, and you're first going to need to get your Tri-Wing. So you can flip this over, and there's going to be 4 Tri-Wing screws right here. You just want to unscrew all 4 of these easy enough. Just, if you're confused, it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Simple as that. Alright, so now that we're going to get into the controller, this is going to be like the Joy-Con rail is going to go with the bottom. It's going to be attached to the bottom of this. So essentially what I like to do is I kind of like to get my spudger, and you could use like a guitar pick or anything similar, kind of get it here at the top and just lightly then go up here, kind of just separate these as you're seeing like what I do here. And then it's kind of clasped around the back. So what you'll want to do, kind of go back here. And when you hear that pop, there you go. You don't want to rip it off. You want to be really gentle with this right here, all right? So for safety reasons, the first thing you should do once you're inside of here is disconnect your battery. So for that, you're going to be looking for the battery. Obviously, you're going to see these red and black cables, these 2 little wires. And what you can do is just kind of raise this up a little bit so you can easily access it. And I mean, don't just like use a ton of force, but you want to just kind of, look, that's, you just disconnect it like that. That's literally all you're doing right there. So it's pretty simple. Now at this point, you can remove the battery because we are going to need to remove that. So what I do is I kind of come down here where you're seeing this, kind of just lightly put this in, and you want to loosen it. That's all you want to do. And the rest you can kind of do by hand. This one's a little bit tougher. You can also remove this here, the antenna. Just move it out of the way. If you have to get under a little bit more, you can. You just want to be careful because this is a battery here, so you don't want to like poke at it or anything, mind you. There we go. So this one took a little bit more force, probably more force than what would be normal on there, but the battery still looks to be in good shape, so we can keep that over to the side, and that should all be good there. And you know, you might not even need to do that, but I just did it there regardless. So what we're going to do on here is now we need to get our Phillips 0. So on this, go ahead, switch your bit out, and there's going to be a few screws that we need to get to. One of them is going to be right down here, and I'm actually going to do my best to zoom in, show you all. So perfect. One of them is going to be right over here, and there's going to be one here, and there's going to be another here, and these ones are gold. So you want to unscrew all 3 of these and keep them somewhere safe. All right, so here, this is going to be a little bit difficult, but you're going to want to pop this off. So just the trigger or the the ZR. Always forget which one it is. So what I do is I kind of just take my spudger, kind of put it underneath here a bit, and kind of just not pry, but kind of like something like that. Like you're turning a key, except mine exploded all over the place. Now there's going to be 2 little springs like this. One of them is right here, and one of them, I'm not sure where it went, so we need to locate that. And here we go, they're actually right here. So you got both of these 2 springs. You just want to make sure you're going to keep them all safe there. And then this little button and this ribbon, you just want to unscrew this. And that's it. So we've got that one unscrewed. We're going to move that to the side. We're not going to disconnect that ribbon because we don't have to. But either way, I'm going to come over here. We're going to remove this. And there we go. And, you know, I'm probably going to have to put this in here. You don't have to remove the battery. That's kind of a force of habit just because I'm used to reshelling these. But either way, this is what we need to access. So right here, there's going to be 2 screws, and there's going to be this clasp. And this, I really recommend you use the spudger here. So you want to come over to where this ribbon is, and you see that black part here, that clasp. You want to release it very gently. Then you can kind of just take the old, or we don't even need to touch that actually because we're going to unscrew this. So you're just going to very gently unscrew. You're going to have to kind of fight with it a little bit. Take that off. And here, you're going to have to just gently disconnect the ribbon. And once you got that disconnected, there you go. That is your old stick. So this might also have come apart here, but that's fine. That's just kind of like a little piece of adhesive in a way, kind of just a little part there. And that's a-okay. You might have to wiggle that back into place, but either way, once it's there, now we can really just work backwards at this point. So you'll need to get I'd recommend move your old stick just somewhere completely different where you're not going to have ready access to it because you don't want to get it confused. So you want to take your brand new part, you're going to kind of just wiggle it around a bit, thread it through. There we go. And if you're working on a flat surface, I've learned it's a little bit easier to kind of do it a little something like this. But it might even be better to just put the ribbon in first. So for that, this is where it does help to have that little spudger tool. And it just depends on how you want to do this exactly here. So we do a little something like this. Hopefully you all can see it just fine. Kind of bring it in, you need to feed the ribbon in there just like that. That's perfect. Perfect. And you're gonna see like there's notches right there, and they pretty much end where this little yellow tab should end. So once that's all done, we can secure in this ribbon by just pressing down on that, and that's it, that's done. So now we get to screw this in. That's the harder part right there, thankfully. That's really all about it. So you kind of have to just pop that in, get it into place. And with this, I feel if you're working on a flat surface, which you should be, it's going to be a little bit easier to just kind of float this here. So I'm kind of getting that all in place there. That's a-okay. And if this is still fighting with you, you might have to get it just underneath this little black part right here. There's kind of like a black plastic piece, if you can see. You kind of have to just get this piece of paper, for lack of a better word, underneath that. And once it's hooked in there, again, you're going to want to kind of push in, make sure it's all there snug. And from here, we're going to be screwing this in. So it does help to have one of these secured in. And once you do that, there you go. You can grab the other one, get your screw, and screw this in as well. There we go. So that is all complete at this point. So now again, we're going to need to work backwards here. And from here, we just need to kind of slide this in like so. Make sure you have this all lined up properly right here. And it would also help out if you screw in a few of these screws here, which we can go ahead and get into place since this is where this needs to go. So again, just the 3 where it came from. One is going to be down here in the corner. You want to make sure your R button is not going to go anywhere. And the other 2 are going to be right here and right here. Alright, so with all that done, we can now bring our ribbon with the button attached. We're going to put this back in place. Should go a little something like that. It's all notched, so you really can't mess that up there. It's just going to fit all nice and snug when you find the right spot for it. So you want to screw this in right here, and there we go. That's it. Now, the last part here, which I'd say this is probably going to be the hardest part here, is getting the ZR back into here. So the springs are pretty much going to go in these 2 little notches, and where you see the ZR, there's also 2 little nubs here, and that's where they're supposed to meet, and they're all supposed to connect that way, and this kind of snaps in. So I'm not sure of the best way to really show you all right here, but really what I do is I kind of just get them both into place like this on the controller itself, and then I kind of just get both the nubs to meet up inside of them here. Again, you want to be careful of, your ribbons right there, that you're not putting any extra stress on them. And this is why it's a little bit hard, because you're dealing with these 2 springs right here. And I personally am not a fan of springs, but I guess they are required for this step. Either way, once you have them in, you then want to make sure your ZR, if they are in here, you want to make sure it's kind of notched up correctly. And you kind of want to push it into place like that. And you'll know because you'll be able to click it just fine, just like the R button. Now here, again, I did take the extra step, it seems, in hindsight, of removing the battery. So I'm going to keep this in because I'm going to at least annotate that you don't have to remove the battery, but if you chose to, you just pop it back in like that. I would say here, we did not disconnect the antenna, so what we can at least do is we can kind of pop the antenna here back in like this to make sure it's running against this here. And then when you plug your battery back in, what I recommend doing is you want to make sure you kind of want to just look at this, and there's 2 little notches there. And you want to make sure they're going to be facing downwards, like down towards the little motherboard itself. And then from here, what I do is I kind of just line it up. Again, it's a little bit difficult to show on camera, but I kind of just line it up with the connector on the board. And once it's lined up, you can kind of just come from above with your spudger, and you can apply pressure. It just needs a little bit of pressure, that's it. But once it's connected in, you're done. It's great. So now with all of that there, that is it. Again, I just actually pressed a button, and we have power to this thing. Just even show you all again. So now we need to close this up. When you close it up, you kind of have to look in a way here. I'm kind of trying to show you all the best way, at least on camera. So you kind of need to look and like line up your Joy-Con rail. Then you push in, and it should close up all nice and tight like that. You can also do a nice button check, make sure everything's all good. Make sure you can press inwards on that, and you should be okay at that point. So if all is well, you can switch back over to your tri-wing, and you should be able to re-screw everything back in. And there we go. If all goes according to plan, you should have a nice reassembled right Joy-Con with a new stick on there. So we should be all good at that point. Now that the right one is fixed, we've only fixed half the problem because we also need to address the left one. So we're going to do the same thing here. So for our left Joy-Con, we're just really it's going to be about the same thing here. We're going to flip it over, and there's going to be 4 screws that are all tri-wing screws. So you want to get out your tri-wing bit. You just want to remove all 4 of these, and just like before, it's going to be righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, in case you ever get confused. Alright, so just like the other one, we're going to go in, and we're going to kind of come from the top. This is typically the easier way, I find. Just kind of turnkey it like that. Kind of come around here. Something like that. Do the same thing. That's all good. Come back around. There we go. All right. So now again, you want to be really careful with this. Like, you don't want to just like rip it off or anything. You want to be real careful with that. So there are going to be this one, the left one, you do have to remove the battery on here because there's going to be 2 screws underneath that we have to get to in order to fully remove this piece here. So for that, there's going to be 1 Phillips head screw right here, and I can switch over to my Phillips head bit, and we're just going to begin unscrewing that. So now at this point, I actually kind of broke my rule there, but we're going to disconnect the battery. So this should be the first thing you do, but you just want to kind of find the connector right here. You want to just gently pull up, and it disconnects like that. Now yet again, kind of come over here with my spudger tool, and just kind of position it underneath, and just do a little something like that. And we got it loosened. You want to be real careful, but there you go. So we've gotten all that removed, so you can move the battery over to the side, and there's going to be 2 gold screws. There's going to be, if you're looking at it, in the top left and the bottom right, these are the 2 gold screws that you have to remove in order to take out this assembly. So take these 2 out, and then you remove that. And this time around, you actually don't really have to disengage any others unless if you want to take this one off, you can, because this will, I suppose, make it a little bit easier unless you want to feed it through. So that's actually what I'm going to do on this. And there's actually 2 that I'm seeing. So there's going to be this, this, and this. Those are the 3 that I would recommend removing here, the 3 ribbons. So first of all, just disconnect all 3 of them by opening up each latch like so. There we go. And now I'd say you can remove this one. Kind of just use the spudger. You want to be careful here. If you need to remove it by hand, you can do so because we do need to get to that screw. That is important. Next up, we're going to gently remove this. And this one is much easier than the right one because it's longer. And then here, we can actually just unscrew this. So come over here, you're going to unscrew each of these 2 screws that hold in your analog stick. There we go. You removed both of those. And you kind of just have to finagle with this a little bit, like we did before. It's that like little black adhesive there. And once you're available right here, you can kind of just, oh, look, there was like no effort. I already took out the ribbon. So again, you want to move that somewhere else that you're not going to touch. You want to make sure this is going to be back in place. We don't have any like black plastic that's going to get in the way this time around, so this one is easier. But here, you want to take out your new stick here, and we're going to put this in place. You could either do it, you know, there. I'm actually managing pretty well with just doing it by hand, thankfully. If you want to use your tweezers, that's fine as well too. I think I'm actually going to do that just to be safe. So we have it right here, as you can see. I'm going to bring my tweezers in. I'm going to push that in as much as I can, but still be careful with it. It actually goes in pretty easily, I would say, right there. So I think that's all good. That's all good, yep. And you kind of just want to apply a little bit of pressure while you're clasping it in, just so it doesn't go anywhere. So that's clasped, that's great. So now at this point here, we can go ahead. This button might come off. You just have to be a little bit careful. If it does, kind of just get it back, make sure it's all loaded, ready to go, like you see that. Alright, so once we got that popped back in, what we can do is we can focus our efforts again on this. You do have this little ribbon that might go underneath that needs to go over because you don't want to screw through it. So mind you, once you have all of that situated, you want to make sure that's all good. You want to make sure everything is there safely. And then from here, again, we're just going to do the same thing we did before, where you apply kind of a little bit of pressure while you're doing this. Get it into place. There we go. Screw it in quick, just like that. We're going to do the exact same thing, and again, this screw is going to be underneath the ribbon, so we need to move this ribbon away. We're going to screw it in underneath. And there we go. And I would say at this point here, we can go ahead, get this popped back in. So I'm going to make sure these are opened up, ready for loading. And I'm going to use our tweezers here. Just bring this in. You want to load it up like that. There you go. So once you have it loaded in, and there should be kind of like a line that's meeting right there. You should be able to see that, at least when you're doing this in front of you. And close that up, and you're all good. So now there's just one last ribbon that we need to take care of, which is going to be this one right here. That was from, you know, where we pulled the battery. So it's going to be the same thing. This is going to be the smallest ribbon. I'm going to take this. We're going to kind of load it up like here. Once we're in here, we should be able to load it up like that. Once you have it all loaded up, I'm actually just going to use my finger to clasp it shut. There we go. All right. And you should kind of see something lined up with that as well too. But now that we have all the ribbons back in place, we can kind of just gently flip this back upside down here. You want to make sure you're not like pinching the ribbon on anything when you're looking at this. All your buttons should be clicky and in place. And from here, you'll be able to take your screws, the gold screws, remember, and put them all back in place here. The battery, we're going to do the same thing where you pretty much want to see where this is going, and there's 2 notches there. You want to make sure the notches are going to be facing downwards. Then you want to find where the connector is, and you kind of place it on top. That's what I like to do. And then you come in with the spudger, and you just apply some pressure. And then when it pops like that, that means it's been reconnected. So once it's reconnected, you can put the battery back in. We can then reassemble. It's going to be about the same thing here, where kind of come from the top. You get this all loaded up here. If it clicks like that, if it's lighting up, if everything feels great, I mean, you can test this as well too once you're playing your games. But here, I would say confidently enough that we can go ahead and close up shop, and we should be all ready to go. So let's go ahead and get these 4 tri-wings back in place. Alright, so there we go. We are completely done. Let me grab my other Joy-Con, and that is quite all there is to it. So thankfully, it's not a super daunting task if you're comfortable with opening up something like this. You don't have to rip apart the whole thing, but honestly, in my opinion, yet again, if you're thinking of getting these reshelled or, reshelling it yourself, you might as well just replace these here so you don't have to open up a second time just to do it. But that should hopefully fix, or dare I say mitigate, the drifting issue on your Joy-Con. Any last words on here, I guess, for any recommendations? Once you test this out, I'd also recommend you go into your Switch's operating system, go into the settings, make sure your firmware has been updated for these Joy-Cons, and also make sure they are properly calibrated, and that way you'll be able to make sure that your new sticks are working properly. Anyways, that is about it for this video. Hopefully it helped out. If it did, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If it didn't, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone.